Welcome in our studio of Christians for Israel International. Thank you for joining our program today. And today we have a special guest from Germany, or perhaps I can better say from Ukraine, Mrs. Anemone. She's doing a wonderful work in Ukraine. But Anemone, welcome in our program.
Thank you.
This year was a challenging year for Christians for Israel because the war broke out in Ukraine. Normally, you regularly go to Ukraine to visit Jewish elderly, Jewish Holocaust survivors. How did this war affect you?
We have actually not had normalcy for a few years already, so we already had gone through 2 years of everything changing because of Corona. So the normal working trips we had been doing with international groups to Ukraine, visiting Jewish communities were already a history at that time. So we were hoping for that to get better. And then the situation, the political situation in Ukraine got more and more dense. You could feel that following the news that something is in the air. And but nobody expected the big bang that happened on 24 February. And of course, that was a shock to many. And for me, having grown up in Eastern Germany, it felt maybe closer than for somebody who had not grown up the first few years of their lives under communism and can feel a little bit of what the danger was, you know, that and is, I guess, hanging up in the air for all of Europe and depending on how it's going to continue. So I remember the first few hours I really spent just in shock, but then my friend called me and said, look, this is not the time to get intimidated and to get paralyzed by fear. Let's see how God has prepared us for such a time as this. And that really helped me to get myself together and then get on the phone with the different offices, the office in Ukraine, the office in Holland, and everybody we were working with, and see what's the next step, what can we do, and not to ask why did this have to happen, but to ask what do I need to do, God, what would you have me do now?
So that was your answer. Don't ask difficult questions, but just ask God, what can I do in these circumstances? You're a woman of doing a lot of practical things. You love doing practical work for the Jewish people. What can you do?
Yes, so the first reaction, of course, is you see an emergency and you think you have to run there, to be there and to help on the ground. But I thought, no, we have a wonderful team on the ground in Ukraine. They need our prayer support. They need financial support to do the work they are doing there now. And people need to know about what they need. So I felt my place was behind the desk for the time being, to be a connector, a bridge to convey that information. I was getting constant updates from the people in the field, sending pictures, sending messages. We're going here, we're going there, we're evacuating people. We need funds for food, for medication, for mattresses, for diesel. And so I pieced this information together for news updates, newsletters, website updates. We put a whole campaign out together with our colleagues in the different branches, sharing information, putting out live information quickly, you know, the information what people could do who are not able to be on the ground now, how they could help through their prayers and through their financial support so that people on the ground can do the work only they can do at the moment. And it was amazing, the response we received in many countries, you know, how people responded to seeing the pictures and being able to do something. And I remember I said at the hairdresser, you know, hairdressers are always places where you get a lot of talk, you know, what's topical. And I remember this lady saying, oh yeah, it's terrible pictures on TV, but there's nothing we can do. And I thought, no, it's not true. And I was so happy in a way that I could give people something to do. You can donate for emergency food, for emergency transportation, for the shelter we were operating, and for getting people to safer places and eventually to Israel. And that all translated into euros and dollars and financial support that was needed for that, but also and not to forget the prayers that keep the whole operation going. And we experienced so much protection for our teams on the road, and that didn't come by itself. And I really believe that the prayers of the people also shielded our team. Yeah.
And I know that the donors appreciated the information you gave. You gave in a short time a lot of information of what we are doing with the funds that people gave us. So that was appreciated by the donors. And on the other hand, people can see, wow, we really can do something. We don't only watch TV and see what's happening, but Anemone shows us that we can really do something to support and to comfort these people there. And Anemone, you went to Israel because we believe that the Lord is bringing back the people, His Jewish people from the country of the north to the land of Israel. You visited Israel, and you visited also Jewish people from Ukraine who went on Aliyah. Can you share with us some of your impressions in Israel?
Yes, of course. For me, Israel is a country where I love to go on vacation, meeting friends, and fellowshipping with God's chosen people. But going to Israel to visit people who had been traumatized by a war that I had not done before. So it was a very exciting trip and a very challenging also emotionally, but wonderful to see people who had come specifically out of Mariupol, you know, the city that has been nearly completely destroyed, and where the Jewish community, also together with Christians for Israel, have been able to bring people out in crazy ways, you know, to get them out of the danger zone to safer places. And then Christians for Israel took over and helped taking people to the Moldovan border, and from there to Jewish Agency, and from there they were taken to Israel, and making their first steps in the country, but not in a normal Aliyah process where you arrive in the country of your dreams and you go step by step and you learn the first words of Hebrew and you're relaxed and excited to be in a new country, but as traumatized people, you know, who were still digesting the shock. And I was able to go with my Ukrainian colleague Alina to visit all these people in Israel, and it was amazing to see their reactions, because they had seen Alina the last time a year ago when she visited them in Ukraine, in Mariupol, and received a shawl or a food parcel or some kind gift from the sponsors, and now they saw them a year later. Like a piece from home, you know. So we had very emotional hugs and stories how people survived in the basements, you know, for weeks without any supply of food or the normal amenities to have. And then finally the moment came when they had a chance to get out and make it to Israel. And one lady, Isabella, told us her story a little bit, how they would make, you know, the men would make a little bit of a fire in the courtyard and try to make some food, and when it was possible, when there was no bombing, of course always dangerous, anything could happen at any moment, and then when they had a little bit of food that they could organize from somewhere, she would always say, I have stomach problems, I can't eat today, you know. And then she said, I just said it because there were families with children or with sick people, and I didn't want to take the food from them, you know. So amazing stories how they made it through that. But then she says, look, we've been welcomed in Israel with so much love. When I went to the shop telling people where I'm from, immediately I had invitations. She says, I came with one plastic bag of a few clothes, and now I have 4 suitcases of things that volunteers brought me. And she says, look, we never thought that our brethren who speak the same language with us could do something like this to us. And then we come to Israel. They don't owe us anything. We've never worked in this country. We've never paid into the pension fund. They receive us with open arms, and we should have come much earlier when we still could give something to this country. So it was very, very moving to see that some of the people took the big step and really arrived, also emotionally arrived in Israel.
So that sudden impressive change in their lives, that went well in Israel because they were received with love, and you think they feel at home in Israel now?
I think at home is a big word, is probably a process, and at home also includes family and friends. And many of the families, actually, as I've said, it's in a way an aliyah of tears. Because it's not a normal preparation process and you wave goodbye and then you leave and you build up a new life and people visit you, but all of them had to leave people behind. The younger women had to leave their husbands behind, mothers had to leave their sons behind because everybody of military age still has to serve or be available to serve in Ukraine. So that's also a lot of tears in the process, but it's a place of hope and it's a place of a new beginning, and there's the hope that the rest of the family will be able to come at some point. So I think making Israel a home for them is still a process and also maybe something where we can contribute.
So many look forward to the future for a fully reunion of their families.
Yes.
That they hope that can take place soon. How are the Jewish communities in Ukraine doing now? Are most of the Jews, did they leave on Aliyah for Israel? How do the Jewish communities are doing now in Ukraine?
Yeah, actually in spring we still thought, okay, war is here, the Jewish people are leaving, this is probably the end of the sponsorship program, and we can switch the whole program to Israel and close down in Ukraine and move everything to Israel. Well, that didn't happen, and we realized there's still an incredible pull to keep people in their familiar surroundings in Ukraine, people who live their whole lives in the same Soviet apartment. You know, in the Soviet Union, you didn't get a lot of cash in your hands, but what you were given was an apartment by the state through the factory or the place where you worked. So that is the one thing people have, you know, that don't have big bank accounts, also because of the entire economic situation and the financial crisis they've been through and all the changes, but they have their Soviet apartment, which looked very much the same for everybody, but it's the piece that belongs to them where they've spent their whole lives. And it's incredible already for our elderly in our societies. It's hard to make a big change at their old age. All the more for people who've lived and grown up in a closed system, if you will. So what we've seen is that it's more the younger generation that take the big step to go. And for the older generation, it's only in one of two cases I found. Either they have children in Israel who've been saying for years, Mom, Dad, come to Israel. We are established here now. We can find you a nice apartment. We will take care of you. That's one of the cases, or if everything is really destroyed, like in Mariupol, where they had no other chance but to get out and go to Israel. So those are the people who went to Israel in the older generation, otherwise more the younger people. But I would say 90%, 90+% of the people who were in our sponsorship program a year ago are still exactly where they were at the beginning of the year, in their Jewish communities, hoping that the next rocket will not hit their house, you know, and trying to close their eyes a little bit to what's happening around, just hoping that somehow they can continue their lives. And also, many of them are old and sick. That also needs to be added. You know, they've just made it so far with the support of the Jewish communities and also Christians for Israel helping them with medication. And oftentimes they have somebody who visits them, a nurse who visits them with the daily chores that they have to do, and they just made it so far, but they couldn't physically survive such a big move. So it's challenging for them to still be there, but almost impossible for many to go on their own unless somebody takes them by the hands. So we need to continue providing for them where they are, and the program still operates in every city where we had the program before, just under much more difficult circumstances, you know. And some places it's a real sacrifice for the members of the Jewish community to continue visiting them, because it means that they go outside or they're exposing themselves to danger, but they continue doing the work, and we try to work with them to show love to these elderly who are not that mobile.
Yeah. So that's why you recently went back to Ukraine despite the dangers of the war.
Yeah, it took a long time for me to come to that point, but after a year of not having been to Ukraine, I just couldn't stand it anymore, you know, and so many calls from people through our contact people. Sometimes they put the elderly on the phone and they talk a bit and you feel how lonely they are. You know, they were lonely before. They were getting even more lonely during 2 years of Corona, and now they're cut off in many places, you know, and the normal visits that were done by us, by the Jewish community, went down and down. And so getting them on the phone for once, it meant so much to them. And I realized I really need to try at least to go to those places where it's more or less possible. And it was so precious to see these people. And Lilia, one of the survivors in Uman, one of the first people we put in the program years ago, you know, she shared her heart, and many of those of the generations say, look, I was born in the war, I will probably die in the war. But then she said, no, I still want to see the end of the war. I want to live to see the end of the war. And then she went with her crutches, step by step, very slowly down into the basement, because she said, I made so much fruit I conserved for the winter, and I want to share some with you. I made so much, I have enough. I want you to take something with you, you know, so they still want to share something because they're so happy that somebody remembers them, visits them, and that's what our team does now also, and it's very important. Yeah.
So our sponsorship program keeps on being necessary for the Ukrainian Jewish elderly.
Absolutely.
And also it keeps being important that you and Alina and other team members of Christians for Israel Ukraine keep visiting those people and comforting them.
Yes, yes.
When people watch this program, Anemone, and they feel that they want to do something for these Jewish elderly and Jewish Holocaust survivors in Ukraine, what can we do?
I think we have an opportunity still at this time to do several things, to help bring God's people home. Something we see happening in our years. Our grandfathers and grandmothers started seeing it, but we see it now happening very quickly at huge dimensions, and we can be part of God making history. And also in many individual lives, we can bring healing. I came to some places, some people even now, who say, you're the first German I've ever seen, the first German who's ever come to say sorry. And you know, it's all these years with the pain they've gone through. And now suddenly that moment comes where somebody comes and hugs them and shows them the heart that we have as Christian believers. Such an opportunity, and it's also making history for that one person at that time. And some of us can go there. Some of us can do the shopping of food products and the medicine and the hugs. Some of us are in the prayer support ministry, you know, to help protect the teams and energize the teams that are on the ground, that are in Ukraine. And some of us can help financially to bring the Jewish people home and to help those communities where the elderly are still in that place, where they've grown up. And so whichever way God calls us to help, I think it's the call of our time. And it's not the question, what do we owe, but what does God allow us to assist him with, to be part of the wonderful work that he's doing in our times.
So as a Christian German woman, you are the right person at the right place in Ukraine, doing this wonderful work. Thank you, Anemone. It's wonderful to hear all your stories, to listen to you, and you do an amazing job together with our 25 people counting team in Ukraine under the leadership of Koen and Ira, what you're doing with them. May God bless you, may God strengthen you, and may God also inspire you not only to give them the food and the help, but also keep on giving them the love and the solidarity that those people who are often lonely need so much. Thank you, Anemone.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this program of Christians for Israel. And we invite you to pray for Anemone and the team in Ukraine. We invite you to keep on supporting this very important work of the food, the aid, and the assistance in Aliyah. Thank you very much again, and may God bless you all, and hope to meet you in our next program. Thank you.